Episode 4, the Professor Mulderry in the house at the Jmack Experience Podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Very glad to be here.
We appreciate you. Are you excited?
I'm very excited. Can't wait to converse with you, Johnny.
Thank you so much once again. It's going to be a great episode. And episode 4, the Professor. You already know. The Jmack Experience Podcast. Tune in behind the scenes. Let's go. All right, we're back. Episode 4, we have a very, very, very exclusive guest. This episode is very special to me because I have been waiting for this for a very, very long time. I believe, right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming?
At least a year.
At least a year. Wow. Good things happen to those who wait. I think that's the quote for today. We have a professor on the show. This doesn't happen often. And it's not only your average professor. This is a college professor for Providence College. She has had many accolades. She has done work with high school students, middle school students, elementary students, work with the homeless. I could go on for days. But before we get into that, what is your name and where are you from?
My name is Dara Mulderry, and I grew up in Albany, New York. I'm in a big family. I'm the oldest of 8 children, so I was teaching really young. And by the time I was in my late 20s, I moved to New York City, spent a big phase there, and then I moved up to Cambridge, Mass, and then Boston, and then 11 years ago to Rhode Island. Wonderful Rhode Island.
I think that is why me and you have clicked for this long. Because, not for nothing, you're from New York City. So, yep. Your whole life in New York City. And then Cambridge, Massachusetts, isn't that the
yep.
famous...
It's where Harvard and MIT are. That's right. When I first went there, I wasn't going to Harvard or MIT. I was going to Brandeis, which is about 10 miles away. But then once I finished my coursework at Brandeis, I started teaching at Harvard for about 10 years.
Wow.
So that was a great
an
experience.
accomplishment, right?
Well, I learned a lot, and I had access to one of the best libraries in the world, and that was terrific.
And what do you mean by one of the best libraries in the world? Like, what was it that was so different about that?
Well, there were so many nooks and crannies. So when I went in there and wanted to work, and I'm really a multitasker. I'm someone who often has to walk while I'm reading because I'm kind of hyper. But Harvard Library, it was called Widener Library, had nooks and crannies. There was one corner that only had books written by Teddy Roosevelt.
Like an exclusive section?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess exclusive, but very few people knew about it. So I used to bring my pile of work, but whenever I got bored with my work or I couldn't focus, I'd just stand up and start looking at the books written by Teddy Roosevelt, look at the photographs of him, look out the window. It was just a good place to think.
Now, many of her accolades, she is a PhD graduate. And but before we let me give her a round of applause. Thank you for being on my show. Thank you so much. We're gonna get into the intro. Thank you once again for being in the Jmack Experience Podcast. I am so excited. I'm jumping out of my skin right now. You can't even imagine how I feel, but thank you so much once again. Professor Mulderry.
No, Mulderry.
Mulderry. I'm so sorry.
No, the best of the best make that mistake.
I think New Yorkers always fuck up names.
It's an old Irish name, Mulderry.
I love it. Thank you so much once again for being on my show. We gladly appreciate you. Let's get into this intro. Welcome to the Jmack Experience Podcast. This show is for motivational purposes only. However, we will not be politically correct, but our goal is to inspire those who listen and watch the show. Thanks for tuning in. Please be sure to follow us at the Jmack Experience Podcast and email us if you would like to be a guest on our platform at the Jmack Experience Podcast at gmail.com. Peace. Now, once again, I want to thank you for being on the show and welcome. And how have you been? How has life been treating you?
Pretty well. I mean, this time of year is really restful compared to most of the other times of
Summertime,
year.
right?
Yeah. Well, I do work in the summer. However, I tend to save my vacation days for June.
Okay.
So I went to San Francisco for 8 days.
You like California?
I love California. But
Being
I
an
love
East
everywhere.
Coast
I love
person?
everywhere. I'm very much an East Coast person, but visiting California, visiting Montana, visiting Washington State, it's just different and interesting, and it refreshes your brain, you know?
So what is it that refreshes you about the West Coast? I've never been. I like Vegas. I've been to Vegas
Oh, yeah.
a couple times, but what is it about the West Coast that refreshes you?
Well, you know, I can't speak about all of it. I haven't been to Southern California, which I know is very different from Northern California. But when I go to San Francisco, I start walking those hills. I walk 4 miles a day. I get into conversations with people, with strangers. Right. And in San Francisco, when you get into conversations...
That's the New Yorker in you, right? You
totally,
like to talk to
totally,
random people.
Totally. And
like riding the train and stuff. You ride the train when you're in New York?
I always ride the subway when I'm in New York to every borough. And my mother's from Brooklyn. She was born in Brooklyn in the 30s. She was born in Flatbush, right near what is now Kensington, and sort of near Borough Park. You know. Wow. Anyway, but San Francisco, every conversation with a San Franciscan is meaningful.
Really?
You know, yeah, it really is.
And why do you feel that way?
I don't know why they're that way.
Is it like a talent, or is it like something special, or?
They definitely relax more than New Yorkers, but they're
not as intense?
Yeah, they don't move as fast. Okay. They slow down. However, like New York City, most of them are there to be creative.
Right.
And so it reminds me of New York in that most people are trying to create a project of some kind, and you can ask them about that. But it's a little different in that they're just slower paced. Like, I went to rent a bicycle, and the guy who rented it to me, he was an ex-Marine. He was 30. He told me about his Marine experience. He was born and raised in San Francisco. He told me about that. Then I took the bike for 2.5 hours. I came back. I said, I've had it 2.5 hours. What do I owe you? He said, well, I'm only going to charge you for 2 hours because we had such a good conversation.
Wow. And
that's San Francisco.
What was the conversation about?
Mainly, no, it was about accents.
Accents of people.
In the United States, in different regions.
In different regions.
Yeah.
That's amazing. People that you meet sometimes, you talk about the most randomest things, right?
Totally.
Now, what was it like for you growing up in the city?
Yeah, I didn't grow up in New York City. I grew up in Albany, New York. Right. So and north. Upstate New York.
It snowed like crazy out there.
It snowed more than New York City, but not as much as Buffalo. You know what? It was a lot like Providence.
Really?
Yes, Albany is a little smaller than Providence.
It's like the outskirts?
I was right in the city, and it's full of different ethnic groups, most of whom immigrated sometime between the 1890s and the 1980s, you know?
Really?
So, yes, very similar mix of groups as Providence. And in fact, I think it's one reason why I love Providence so much is it has a lot of the best of Albany as well. And
you said that you're Irish?
Irish American, yeah.
I thought you were Jewish this whole time. I don't know why. sorry for stereotyping.
That's interesting. Well, I have.
You see, New Yorkers could be very stereotypical, right?
Well, you know what's funny? Most of my brothers and sisters have reddish hair and blue eyes, and I have jet black hair and dark eyes. Yeah. But so did my dad. It's just there's a phrase called Black Irish, and I'm considered Black Irish.
Really?
Yeah. And if you go to Ireland, you'll see a lot of people who look like me, but the stereotype is different, right? So when I lived in New York City, very often people thought I was Jewish.
That's awesome.
Isn't that funny?
That's I box, so I love people that box. The Irish too, you know. Oh. Yeah, I love to box. So okay. So growing up, all right. So what in school as a child were you like a straight A student? How were you academically in school?
Yeah, I was really lucky. I was good at school.
Really, really good.
In terms of yeah. I was.
Like a
I was.
nerd, we could say?
Kind of a nerd. I loved math. I loved reading. I didn't love everything about school.
What didn't you like about school?
Oh,
The bullying and stuff like that?
yeah, some of that, although I was pretty lucky with that till I was about 11. Then I was
You're
bullied.
lucky you didn't go to school in Queens.
Yeah.
It's about
Then
Jordans,
around age
what you
11,
wore.
I definitely was bullied. You know what? I didn't like that, if you finished reading something during class, then you just had to wait.
Were you the type that you raise your hand, they didn't pick on you? That used to happen to me sometimes.
Yes.
I was in college prep when I grew up. I'm fairly smart, believe it or not.
I can
People-
tell you're very smart.
People think that I'm not academically smart, but then when they speak to me, they're like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Oh, see, now I would think of you.
Yeah.
You would be the kind of student I would love having.
Oh, that's
Okay.
awesome. Thank
No,
you.
that's really true. Yeah.
How did you feel? How did that make you feel?
Well, I think that the thing that I found difficult in school, and that's hard to believe
Growing
now.
up.
Yeah. While I was growing up, what I hated was raising my hand.
Raising your hand, right? You felt shy?
I got very nervous. Yes. So
Yeah.
even though I could do my work pretty well and I liked a lot of what I was learning, I was lucky because I liked to read.
Yeah.
But most of the reading I loved wasn't the reading in school. Most of the
Right.
reading I loved were just books I felt like getting out of the library. But I was very nervous speaking in class. It took me a long time to
Because part of your
calm
grade
down.
is participation. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. And well, it was just, I got nervous speaking in front of people. You know?
So you don't like to speak. So going in front of the class is like you're nervous, right?
No, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not
'Cause you're
anymore.
a professor now.
Yeah, no,
You
I
run the
really,
show.
yeah. When the first time I taught, I was 24 and I taught middle school and I was nervous. Oh my gosh, I could hardly sleep for 3 weeks before I started. But then once I did it, all the nervousness left me.
Now, before we go there, before your love for teaching and all that, did you have any dreams and aspirations of becoming something else before teaching? Like, did you have some people want to become? When I was younger, I wanted to be an actor. I do music. I wanted to be a lawyer at one point. I still want to be a lawyer. Some people tell me it's not too late. But was there
Not too
anything
late.
else that you wanted to become before teaching?
Yes. The first thing I wanted to be very much, all the way till about 8th grade, was a nurse.
A nurse.
A nurse. And then I found out girls could be doctors, and then I just wanted to be a doctor.
I think you would have been a really good doctor.
Oh, thank you. In another life, I would love being a doctor or a lawyer, I think. But I just kind of I didn't major in teaching. I majored in math and history, a combination. History, more credits. Math was my second field. But
You're good at math? I was the worst at math.
I love
I
math.
failed math 4 times in high school.
Oh, see, I love tutoring people in math and helping them see they can get good at it because I really love it. But you know how I fell into teaching? I didn't know what I was going to do. I was thinking about going into international relations. And then one of my aunts said this school needed a teacher desperately. Could I drop everything and do it?
Your aunt?
Yeah.
Okay.
My father's sister.
And what age were you then?
I was 24.
So this is what you graduated college by.
I had graduated college and I
What
was
college
working
was
as a
this?
social worker. The State University of New York at Albany. It's called, it used to be called SUNY Albany, and now it's
SUNY,
called,
I remember SUNY.
yeah, U
It was
Albany.
like
Now it's
CUNY.
called
I
U
went
Albany.
to Borough
Yes.
Manhattan Community College. That's what I went to.
I know. I've been
You know,
there.
that's
I've been there. That's a place. That's a place I would love to
Amazing.
teach. I would love to teach at the Borough of Manhattan Community College,
Really? It's right next to the World Trade Center too.
BMCC. It's amazing.
Oh my God. That's so cool. Like, so
I
cool.
I love it. But once I was in a classroom teaching history and philosophy and literature all together, I realized that I would never get bored because there are always new human stories I haven't heard.
Of all walks of life.
All walks of life. And I realized that even though I love math, and even though I would have really liked healing people as a doctor, that my life really was about compassionate listening to as many kinds of lives as I could, and then pulling them together to teach those stories. And that's what I do.
So, let me get this straight. Were you always an avid reader as a child?
As a child, definitely.
What's your favorite type of literature to read? What do you like to read? Do you like? Because I like autobiographies. I like history. I like reading people's life. Like I like Jimi Hendrix story. I like people that are famous. Like because I do music, so I like Jimi Hendrix. I like the Beatles. I like people that like made it really big in life. You know, like what do you like to read about?
That's interesting. When I was a child, I mainly liked made up stories and biographies of heroes. No, fiction.
Oh, fictional.
Fiction,
Yeah,
so made up. I loved fiction, which is made up stories, and I loved biographies of people who I found heroic, like,
I like things like I Believe.
Oh, yeah. But what's so interesting is now, after reading hundreds of books, many of which were boring, in 2 master's degree programs and 1 PhD program, now I almost only read biographies and autobiographies, like you just said. I love reading people's life stories, especially if they wrote it down themselves, including musicians.
Yeah.
Yeah, I teach a course on the 60s.
Wow, I love the 60s. This is awesome.
And in that class, I always have my students read a memoir by Bob Dylan's first love.
Bob Dylan's a gold.
Yes.
I love music. We can go on for music for days.
Yeah, exactly.
I talk to Jimi Hendrix. I know all genres. Do you believe that motivational speaking and books are something helpful to people? Because you know about books. Because I have a lot of books about motivational, higher power, higher learning. Do you think that helps people? Because I've been reading a lot about it.
I think when people
like how to common wealth and all that stuff. Do you think that helps?
You mean how to make wealth?
Yeah, like you know how there's books on inspirational learning, higher power, how to become wealthy, how to become an entrepreneur. You think that helps people?
I think it can.
You think it's
I think it can. Look, I never like to generalize because everybody's different. And I really believe in people following where their gut is telling them to go. I think that reading the life stories of people you admire can be very helpful. Yeah. Because you connect with where they made changes, and that can really inspire you to make changes too, right? Yeah. It also can make you feel like you have a friend.
Right, you connect with them.
That's right. You're not limited to just the people you've met. You connect with some people who have achieved a lot in this world, and through their memoir or their story, you become a kind of friend to them and them to you. I really believe in that community you can build through books. I think that when someone's speaking very honestly about their path and they've reflected on it, that is motivating. Wow. I think some of the books published on how to get rich, they probably have...
It's like fabricated, right?
Well, they might have 5 great paragraphs, but then the publisher said you need to write a whole book. And then you're reading it and you're thinking, this is stretched out. Right. And let me tell you, even PhDs sometimes do that. Many people make that mistake. They really have just a short article to give, and instead they expand it into a book when they really should have just made it an article.
What were your favorite subjects growing up in school?
In school, my favorite subjects were math and social studies.
You like social studies? You like history?
Yeah, but I would have told you then I liked math best.
Why math?
Yeah, that's a good question.
You like money, huh? Like making money.
No. I just love playing with numbers. I actually get kind of excited to do my taxes now because it's my only math project every year. So I wait to do it on a day, like it's almost like a treat to just do math. I think I like because it comes out sort of clean in the end. And most
Do you think about numbers every day when you wake up? There's people that think about numbers all day long.
When I was still studying math, I thought about numbers a lot. Now
really? So that really exists?
Yeah. I did. I noticed patterns, numerical patterns more than I do
like
now.
That sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see numbers like, is that?
Yeah.
But like, cause I do music and stuff, so I talk about Illuminati and all this diabolical type of shit. So I'm like, oh, it's a 666. Oh, that's a 6. Oh, so I'm like, why is that a 6? Oh, why? You think that exists? People think about that, right? On the regular.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. It's kind of fun to think about number systems. But outside school, I loved music.
Right.
Loved music. And my brothers and sisters
What's your
and
favorite
I.
genre?
Oh, I like so many genres. I like
What's
so
your
many.
favorite?
It's changed over the years.
Who's your favorite artist?
I don't think
You gotta have one as a child.
Oh, as a child.
Who's your favorite?
Oh, when I
Growing
was
up.
a child, I loved Carole King.
Carole King.
Yeah.
All right.
I feel the earth move
What?
under my feet. I feel the sky.
And then who else after that? Did you like any rock bands or?
Oh yeah, but kind of pop rock. I loved the Doobie Brothers. I thought they were fantastic. I loved Queen.
You like Queen? I love Queen.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Freddie Mercury.
Oh yeah. Do you know
Fucking legend.
in my high school, a guy who was in my class, he went to our Glee Club. You know, Glee Club like
Don't tell me you met Freddie Mercury.
teacher. No. I wish, but Bohemian Rhapsody had just come out and it was a big
Fire.
hit. So he went to our teacher. She was only 25 years old, and he said, "Would you let us, as a choir, do Bohemian Rhapsody?"
They did it?
Yes, and we rehearsed. It was
You sang it?
fantastic. Oh well, yeah. There are about 21
Did
of
you
us.
have your beautiful PhD robot?
No, but we got into it. It was fantastic. Wasn't that a great teacher to say yes?
Yes, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Did you? So you like to sing too?
I love to sing.
Sing-
And I love to
sing in your
dance.
part-
I love to sing and I love to dance.
You
So
did?
outside school, singing and dancing. And I used to be in
Yeah,
musicals.
you did other things.
I used to be in musicals. I was in Hello Dolly.
Really?
Yeah.
So you do a little acting?
I did then. Yeah. I was
What?
in Grease.
You did Grease?
Yep.
Oh, it's one of my favorite. I was actually Grease last year for Halloween. I was John Travolta.
Oh, that's great. Oh, so you have acting
I love
chops.
everything.
You're
I love
theatrical.
everything.
Yes.
I love everything.
Yes.
So now, let's backtrack a little bit. Now, so what brings you into the career of becoming a teacher? Was where I want to get at. Now, growing up and everything.
I think I didn't know I was going to be a teacher, but I look back now and I did a lot of explaining to my younger brothers and sisters, and I liked
How many
explaining
brothers
things.
and sisters?
So I have 5 younger brothers, 2 younger sisters.
It was like that back in the day, right? It was like
It was,
big
yeah.
fan. I'm an only child, so like,
Oh
I
wow!
have no brothers, no sisters.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
well. You have cousins, I hope.
Yeah, I have a lot of cousins.
There you go. You need cousins.
None
You
of them
really
care
need
about me
cousins.
though. Until I become famous, everybody's gonna be like,
Oh, yeah.
"Hey, you remember me?"
They're going to be in touch then. Yeah, so lots of that. And also, my mother was a really great storyteller and explainer, and that probably was shaping my brain as a pretty good teacher.
Yeah.
But I really see, for me, teaching, and that's why I've taught so many different age groups. For me, teaching is a real privilege, right? How much of a privilege is it to get a group of people in a room, all of whom have their own path, and all of whom are at a point where they have strengths and they have things they want to work on? How much of a privilege is it to get to be with them for 5 months or 9 months and think about who they are, where their strengths are, and then ask them, how do you want to move forward? Let me help you. It's really fun. And, it's never dull.
Do you believe that you could never stop learning or getting an education for yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Anyone who watches a 16-month-old or an 18-month-old child knows that we are learners, right? And so school is just one small place to learn. I believe everyone I meet is a learner. And to me, the world is a school, right? So it's only occasionally we get stuck and we're
So
not
you believe
learning so much.
Everyone's learning one day at a time.
Oh, everyone's learning. I mean, I think sometimes we get bogged down and we're not learning as fast
Some
because.
people are like dumbed down, some people are not. We're not
Well,
gonna say dumbed down. We'll say
No,
that.
I think
Some people take some more time than others. We'll say that.
it depends on where they are.
Yeah.
When-
Who's teaching them? Right?
No, when I taught middle school, they were 11, 12, 13-year-olds, I didn't worry about a student who had low grades unless the student didn't have something they were into, right? So when I met with their parents, sometimes the parents who knew their child had low grades would come in and say, "Oh, we know." And I'd say, "Wait a minute. No. She's fantastic in the cafeteria. She knows how to guide every conversation. She goes out in the playground and she comes alive, and she's a fantastic athlete." I only worried about kids who weren't into anything. For me, grades didn't matter as long as they were, making their way and passing. I just like to see some life in my students. They don't have to get an A in my classes. I like to see some life in them, something they like doing, something they're making plans for.
Exactly.
That's cool, right?
Now, I know that you have taught middle school, high school, GED courses for homeless women in Boston.
Yeah.
And also 20 plus years in the Providence College.
Oh, no.
Amazing.
20 plus years teaching college. 16, let me think, 15 of those.
In Providence College.
Yeah,
Less,
you know
right?
what? Actually, do you know what? I think I've been teaching college now about 25 years. That's gone fast. But yes,
that's amazing.
15 years at Providence College, where I also work one-on-one with students to help.
What's your favorite group of students out of all of those students?
Oh,
I know you love them all. I know that
Yeah.
they all came out to be successful people. But what's your favorite group? What was your favorite? What do you enjoy most teaching?
Yeah.
Do you like doing the college group of kids, middle school? What do you prefer?
Well, right off the top of my head, right now, on June 27th, 2023, I have two answers that come to mind immediately. I loved teaching 7th grade, and I absolutely love teaching adults who are taking college courses. So at Providence College, most of my classes are in the day program where everybody's 18 to 22. However, they have an evening program for people who are 23 to 95 years old.
95?
Oh, yeah.
That's why you like college, right?
Yeah, so
'Cause it could be any year.
this is what they call an evening division. And a lot of these are people who never got a college degree, but they're in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, their 70s. And my oldest student was 95.
Gee, 95 years old?
Now imagine.
What was he studying? If you don't mind me asking.
He did have a college degree, and he was a retired dentist, and he was taking history courses.
He must have been really well off.
He probably was. I don't know. But so I actually had in a history class on the Great Depression, the 1930s, I had students ages 23 to 95. And let me tell you, I had four students in their 50s, 2 in their 40s, 5 in their 20s, and then this former dentist was in his 90s. Do you know how cool it was to have all of them talk about the 1930s, the Depression, and what the creation of Social Security, and whether that was a good thing, a bad thing, a helpful thing, and to
I feel
listen
like
to
a lot
them.
of people nowadays don't rely on that.
No.
And they don't think that that's gonna happen. Like you shouldn't rely on that. People don't even keep a job nowadays. It's
Some don't. That's right. Or they don't save for retirement. But before there was Social Security, it was created around 1936. Before there was Social Security, one third of people in this country over 60 lived in dire poverty.
Wow.
So overnight, Social Security pulled them out of the bottom.
Could you believe that? Save for your Social Security. We're going to get a word from our sponsors. We're going to take a break from the Factory Podcast Room. We'll be right back. If you have a niche for podcasting, look no further. Come to the Factory Podcast Room in West Warwick, Rhode Island. Come to the Factory Podcast Room and get your podcast on. Hit up Franco for your podcast. Tell him the Jmack Experience Podcast referred you at the Factory Podcast Room in West Warwick, Rhode Island. Peace. All right, we're back. And that was a word from our sponsors. Make sure you hit up Franco at the Factory Podcast Room to get your podcasts on. Now, you were just telling us about your favorite group of students. Do you want to elaborate more on that?
I do, because I told you about one group which were adult students from their 20s to their 90s, and having them in a classroom together talking about history. Well, I learned a lot. And I think my other favorite group of students, because it was just so different from college, were my 7th and 8th graders, but especially those 7th graders. And looking back now, here's what was really fun. When you're 12, you can think really well. You might not be able to read as much as a college student, but you really can think. And your hormones haven't really distracted you yet, right? So,
Yeah, you're right.
So if you can get 7th graders on your side, you can have a great time. And I could just go stream of consciousness with them sometimes. Like I'd have a lesson planned and I'd have a period in history we were studying. But if something popped into my brain, I could just ask them about it and they would think along with me. Can I give you an example?
Give me an example.
So imagine...
Before we do that, can we get into album of the week?
Sure.
Album of the week on the Jmack Experience Podcast. Album of the week is Young Thug, Business is Business. Shout outs to him. I know he's dealing with some difficult trials and tribulations right now. Free Young Thug, Business is Business. Make sure you download the street out on all social media platforms. Young Thug, Business is Business. Now elaborate more on that. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm going to be going and listening to Business.
Check out Business Business. He has Drake on it.
No, I will.
There's a few good artists.
Oh, yeah, I
on
like
that
Drake
one.
a lot.
Yeah.
Terrific. So I'll give you an example. One day, I don't know why, I just started explaining to my 27 7th graders. I said, first I asked them, do any of you speak a language besides English? And 2 of them spoke Spanish. And I said, okay, can you guys here who speak Spanish, can you think of 2 words in Spanish that explain something that there's no way to explain in English, right? So then we talked about, I forget what words they came up with, but then I talked about déjà vu. You know how we use the French when we say déjà vu?
Like it happens again and stuff
Yeah,
like that?
like you have a feeling, you're sitting somewhere, or you're looking at somebody, or you're
and
picking
you feel
up.
like you dreamed about it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's called déjà vu.
It happens to me all the time.
Yeah. And we use the French word because English doesn't have a word for that.
Right.
So I explained that to these
It's like
12-year-olds.
touche.
Yeah.
Right?
So then, and this is what I could do with 7th graders that would be hard to do with adults because adults aren't as flexible in their thinking. But I said to the 7th graders after I talked about déjà vu, I said, hey, is there anything you experience that we have no words for? Or no word for?
And what did they say?
So one of them said, pretty brilliantly, I think everyone pictures the week, Monday through Friday or Monday through Sunday. When they say week, everyone has a different way of visualizing it. And we started as a group talking about, like one of the kids said, yeah, whenever I think of the week, I think of it like the conveyor belt in a supermarket, like it's just going around.
And it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
One of my first jobs was working at Pathmark in New York. Remember Pathmark?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but
That's okay.
I'm more of an audio person,
Yeah.
not visual.
Right. And
So you could write stuff on the board all day, but I'm like.
But how do you picture the week? Like when you picture Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
It's confusing.
Saturday. But do you, like for me.
If you tell me tomorrow you have this appointment, that appointment, I remember it.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Yes. But in your brain, like when I say those words, some of the days are kind of in shadow. And
Right.
some of the days are bright, like almost like there's more
Okay,
light.
so some days are dark, some days are lighter.
But it's like, yeah, Friday, Saturday
so you feel like
is brighter.
it's a darker to grayer area?
For me, it's darker gray and then brighter because I guess I'm a visual light person.
Wow.
And then
You ever heard of this saying? I remember one person telling me there's no in between. Have you ever heard that?
there's no in between.
So
Yes.
they say it's either black or white.
Yeah, I don't think that way.
You don't think that? You think there's a in between?
Oh yes. Oh,
There's
yes.
gotta be an in between, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best things I ever heard a student say to me was after I taught about a particular war, she said, or no, it was a he. He said, "Oh my goodness, Dr. Mulderry, now I don't know who the good guys and the bad guys were."
Speaking of wars, what is your favorite war in history?
Oh, favorite. Oh, that's a hard word to use for war.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
One of
No,
your,
I know what you mean, though.
You know, one of the prehistoric.
Yeah.
Times
That's a
of-
great question.
Do you like the Civil War? Do you like World War II, World War I,
Yeah, I mean,
Vietnam? Which one do you like to research on?
you know, I've studied all of them. I've studied every war the United States has been
And I
involved
think we've
in
spoken of
detail.
this before.
Yes. I think I really enjoy studying.
World War II.
I really no for it when it's just the U.S. It's the American Revolution and the Civil War that I most like studying.
Really?
However, when I'm teaching world history, it is definitely World War II.
World War II is amazing, right?
Right? It's very
How did that happen?
well. It's not hard to explain how World War II happened because so much of it had to do with how World War I ended. You know, there was so much left undone at the end of World War I, and the peace treaty blamed Germany almost entirely for that war, and Germany's anger and resentment over being blamed helped to lead to World War II. It's harder to explain how World War I started. And World War I, by the way, wasn't called World War I until
What
there
was
was
it
a World.
called?
It was called the Great War.
Could you believe that Hitler was like, how did he become that guy?
Yeah.
Because to me, he's like, you know, a lot of people don't like to admit it, but how did he become so powerful? Like, how did he get all these people to believe in him?
Yeah.
Because, you know, we could go on and on for days.
Yeah.
But for someone like that, he was in prison.
Yep.
To come out of prison and
Yep.
then overcome that, and then to get a nation to believe in him.
Yeah.
It's like kind of amazing to me. I'm
Well,
gonna be
except
honest.
his story really demonstrates how much circumstances matter because he tried to lead a rebellion within Germany and he didn't have much of a following in the mid-20s.
He had
right?
no followers.
That's
no
how, no,
Instagram
well, he didn't have
followers.
enough and he ended up, you're right, he ended up in prison and he ended up a laughing stock.
Nobody cared about him.
Well, not nobody, but not enough,
Yeah.
right? Then, when he came out of prison, he still didn't have much of a following. It wasn't until Germany fell into an economic depression that
That's
this
amazing.
well, you know, though, do you know there was a guy from France who visited the United
Is
States?
it Mussolini?
No, Mussolini
Who
was
was it?
Italian.
Oh yeah, that's
No,
right.
about almost 200 years ago, this young man from France came to the United States. The United States was very new. It was only 40 years old or 50 years old.
Do you believe that America is the greatest nation? Do you believe that? Or you don't?
I
believe
think
that?
America is a great nation.
But not the greatest.
I don't rank nations that way. Let me tell you something I believe about
All right.
nations, and I think you'll like it.
Tell me.
I believe every culture, whether it's a nation or not, every culture accents a few things about being human.
And once again, I don't want to interrupt you. We are not being politically correct right now. This is the Jmack Experience podcast show. We are not being politically correct. We're just giving you our opinion on everything. So
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I
continue.
think we're.
Yeah.
I don't
This
think
is
we're.
our
I
opinion.
don't, this is
Don't
all
take it
pretty
personal.
open, right? These
Yeah.
are all opinions.
all opinions.
All opinions.
All opinionated.
I
So-
think every culture accents a few things about being human,
Yeah.
and every culture really is its own special. And
Yeah.
I love the United States of America. Do I think
Me too.
in the eyes of God it's the greatest nation in the history? I don't think so. I think all humans are God's children. However, I'm proud
To be an American,
of course.
right?
And I would be proud to be Indian if I were raised in India. I mean, we each have a special. And you know what's fun about traveling?
What's fun?
When you go to every culture accents something different about being human. And you have a personality, Johnny, right? If you traveled to every country in this world, I promise you there'd be 3 or 4 that fit you. And what a discovery would that be? And you don't know what those 3 or 4 would be that just fit your personality. And it might not be what your ancestors were.
You're right.
You know?
I'm Puerto Rican, to let you know.
Yeah.
That's why I love it, because people like Puerto Ricans are made of black Spaniards and Native Americans.
That's right.
So you follow Puerto Ricans too,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So
which
that's
is a
why-
part of the United States.
Exactly. And, I love being American. I love people like, how can you love being an American so much? I'm like, yo, I'm part of the U.S.
Absolutely.
Like, I can't deny that.
Absolutely.
So we're the only Hispanic nation to be part of the U.S.
That's
so
right.
Why not represent?
I have to say, I find it so odd. I really think it's simply that a bunch of flag makers don't want to add another star. But I think I do believe Puerto Rico, if it wants.
Puerto Rico, right?
Oh, if it wants it,
Well,
should
Trump
be on
threw
the
a fucking
flag.
bunch of paper towels at a fucking head. Well, whatever. It doesn't matter. I still love Trump because he's from Queens. He's from my hometown.
He is from your hometown.
I do
that
like
is
Trump.
true.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't care what people think.
Yeah.
Regardless of what people say, I feel like the nation was kind of better off economically. I don't believe about his racial beliefs and stuff like that, and the way he was handling things, as far as the things he says and the goof off things he does. I don't believe in that, but as far as economically, I feel like the nation was a little bit better off. I feel like now they're a little more downside, but that's a whole nother debate.
It is.
But
it is. And
we're not gonna get
I
into
like
that.
his energy. I'm not a huge supporter, but I like his energy.
Yeah, but
he has a lot of it.
getting back into you, what was the highest level of education that you have completed thus far?
So it's called a PhD, which is just letters that mean Doctor of Philosophy.
You are the first person I've ever met to get a PhD. Let me give you a handshake.
Oh, thank you.
You are amazing.
Thank you.
And which college did you complete that with?
So I, after I got out of a 4-year program where you get a bachelor's degree, I didn't go to school again for another 8 or 9 years. And then I moved to New York City to get a degree at the New School for Social Research.
Right,
and
right.
it was a master's degree.
Okay.
Then I worked for the Board of Education in New York. Then I moved up to Boston and I got another master's degree at Brandeis University in U.S. history. And then I got the PhD in U.S. history. It's a lot of school.
It's a lot of. Do you believe that school's not for everyone sometimes?
Oh, absolutely.
Because for me, it wasn't.
Absolutely.
I went to, as I told you, BMCC, and I felt like it just wasn't for me. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm more hands-on. I
Yep.
like to sell.
Yep.
I'm an entrepreneur. I like to just, you see, I like to do my podcast. I'm more talent on base.
Yes.
It's just not me,
Yeah.
I can't sit in a classroom and learn.
Right.
I gotta make money. I gotta. See
Yeah.
cash
You
in
like
my hand.
doing that. Well, you know what? I applaud that, and I have to say this.
So you gotta educate yourself as well.
Also, the students I've had who took breaks from school, they broke the mold, they always come back to school as the best students because they've learned in life, right? But could I tell you, I don't know, in Rhode Island, I could look it up for you, but I know in New York State, where I lived for so long, they have a college where you go to them with your life experience and they give you higher education credits for your life experience. So you could show them everything you've done with your podcast and get 3 courses worth of credit.
Well, you might have to give me that link
I will.
after the podcast.
I will, yeah.
Now, do you consider yourself a harsh grader when it comes to exams or a fair grader?
Well, I do consider myself a fair grader. I will tell you this. I don't give credit when someone doesn't produce the work.
Because
But-
you feel like they didn't earn it, right?
Right. No, I don't. I will never give
Why
you
pass
something for
someone if
nothing.
they didn't earn it?
But here's what I do, and I've done this throughout my career. If the only people who have ever failed my classes, and this is 100% true, are people who just stop coming,
To the class.
yeah. But here's what I do.
And the class you teach now is?
Oh, I teach many different classes. So I teach a class of U.S. history from the 1870s to the present. I teach a world history.
Is that colonial?
That's post-Civil War. So it's mainly the 20th century. And I teach a course just on the 1960s, and we do music and philosophy and psychology. Oh, yes, we do art and music and films. No, well, on the 1960s, no Mozart, but
like Jimi Hendrix?
Totally.
The Who?
The Who, the Beach Boys. Oh, yeah, all of it. Motown.
Oh, so getting into, what were you saying?
Oh, so, but I, wait, what was I going to say?
You're saying if you don't fail them.
Oh, yeah. So, if a student is failing a class of mine,
it's by their own
I always have a one-on-one talk halfway through. Oh, always. One-on-one.
You get together.
I get together. And then I ask them what support. No, it's not so much a warning because they know their grades, Yeah. I say, what kind of support can I give you? And what do you think's been going on?
You offer tutoring?
I offer tutoring. And if they're finishing the course and they're still failing, but I sense that they're engaged, guess what I do?
What do you do?
I say, okay, pick 3 weeks of this course you want to repeat after the course is over. And so
Is that more money?
No, no money.
It's free. Is this something
I
you
do it for free.
My
own time. And I say, you pick three weeks of this course you want to repeat, but I only want you to do this if you're really going to do the work. And guess what?
Can we give you one round of applause for that?
And then I regrade them for those 3 weeks, and when I recalculate their average, if they passed, I change their failing grade to a passing grade.
Wow, that's amazing. People don't
but
care.
But they have to show up.
They have to put the work in.
But let me tell you, when you meet with someone, I ask them, are you sure you want to do these 3 weeks work? And when they say yes, thank you for the opportunity. And then you know what? Every single time they've risen to the occasion. So it's worth it.
So I'm guessing that answers my next question. Do you feel bad when you have to fail someone, or that's on them?
I think in 23 years, I've only had 4 people fail a class.
Wow.
And they just weren't around, And I told them, hey, take it again. Next time, show up. I think you'll probably do well.
You love to read, how many hours do you spend a week on reading?
Oh, that's a good question.
And researching. Because you like to research.
Yeah. Well, you asked me something on break that I could answer now, and that was, what is a typical day in the life of a professor?
Yeah. What do you like to do?
So when I was teaching middle school and high school, you're in the classroom almost all day. Mm-hmm. And then after school's over, you spend 2 or 3 hours getting ready for the next day. You do your plans. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're a college professor, you spend much less time in the classroom, and you spend quite a bit of time researching and writing articles. But also, I have a special position where I do a lot of one-on-one advising with students. So a typical day for me would be to be teaching somewhere between 2.5 and 4 hours.
You take 4 hours to teach?
So some days, but it'll be 2 different classes.
Off? This is on your days off?
No, this is like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. As a college professor,
you're still on the clock. I'm assuming.
Yeah, you're always, they don't really put you on the clock. It's sort of an honor system. You just have to get all your work done. Okay. So most days.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Brief question. You enjoy what you do. You must love what you do.
I do.
What made you want to become a professor out of all careers?
Yeah, that's a good question.
What made you want to become a professor? This is what I really, because it's called the Jmack Experience Podcast show.
Yep.
Out of all the careers, what made you want to become a professor?
I think, I was teaching middle and high school, and then, believe it or not, the parents of one of my 12-year-old students came to meet with me, and they said, have you ever heard of a PhD? And I said...
You didn't have one yet?
No. Wow. And I said, no one in my family's ever done that, and I've heard of a PhD.
How old were you then?
I was 25.
You were 25.
I said, I heard. Well, now I'm not 25.
How old were you when you became a PhD graduate?
Oh, I didn't get a PhD till I was 46.
Oh, damn, I'm 35. So
yeah,
I still got time.
Totally. I
become a lawyer right now.
I started my PhD program when I was 35.
Oh my God! I can become a lawyer right now. What is it?
Absolutely, you could.
A lawyer.
Absolutely, you could.
All
But
right,
anyway, these parents said to me when I was 25, we think you should think about getting a PhD. And they explained to me what it was because these parents were professors.
Wow.
Now, I wasn't convinced at the time because I thought, oh, it takes so long. It costs so much money.
Work.
So I dragged my feet and I kept doing other stuff. I'm still paying them.
You still paying the loans?
So it took me another 10 years. It took me another 10 years to commit. And I did a lot of other interesting stuff. Let me tell you, Johnny, I think one reason I love teaching.
It's not hard.
It's hard. But you know what? I'm glad I did.
I got to give him this. I'm so sorry.
Harder, Daddy.
That's how they give it to you in the office. I'm so sorry. Dara, they give it to you hard.
It's very hard work. Very hard work. You have to write a 400-page dissertation.
A 400-page? You wrote 400 pages?
That's why it took 11 years total. It was really crazy.
And you did it.
Yeah.
You wrote
I wish I'd done it faster. I did.
You wrote 400 pages? How long did it take you to write the 400 pages?
Well, here's the big thing. I had to go to 18 different archives to study papers. That took like 4 years. I was working part-time too.
Okay.
And I was always working.
Where were you working?
Oh, I worked for a catering company.
I love hearing that.
That's when I taught homeless women GED. I wasn't really chefing. I was serving. I did weddings, but I did a lot of part-time teaching. So I got papers from 18 archives. I wrote a 400-page history of American Catholic nuns between the 1930s and the 1980s.
Are you Catholic?
I am.
I'm Catholic too.
I am. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep. And I wanted to write about these sisters who ran colleges to see how they got to do that. Anyway, so yeah, it's a lot of research. But you know how I know that I love what I do? If I won,
how did you know?
If I won the lottery,
you are so smart.
If I won the lottery, I would give the money to a college and tell them that they don't need to name a building after me. I'm going to give them $1 million. They don't need to name a building after me. They just need to let me teach 5 courses a year that I want to teach for the rest of my life.
What's going to be the 5 courses? What would be the 5 courses? Give me the name of each course.
That's a great...
Has to be different subjects, though.
Yeah.
So what? Can we do music as one?
Well, definitely. I'd keep teaching my course on the 60s that is all about ideas in music.
Okay.
Absolutely. Awesome. I would do a course on the 1920s and 30s in 5 different parts of the world. And I picked 5 different nations in the world, and we just do the 1920s and 30s because you know what? You get a glimpse.
The Prohibition area, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you get a glimpse into who we are today when you look at 100 years ago. It's really, really interesting. I would do a course on the history of ideas of what it means to live a good life.
Oh, a good life.
I would look at the major ideas about what the good life is between 1700 and the present. Right? Well, some people think success is the heart of the good life. Other
people think... Do you like the cowboy era? I love the Western era too. Right?
Well, I lived in Montana for a year, and that really hooked me on the West.
I like the Western era too. Like
I forgot to tell you I lived in Montana a year.
You lived in Montana? How was that? It was good?
Oh, fantastic. I did that. When I finished college, I went to Montana and I worked it was kind of like an AmeriCorps program. It was called Jesuit Volunteer Corps. And I worked with pregnant teens in a high school program, but I also explored the hiking there, went into the Rocky Mountains, saw eagles. It was amazing.
The view is crazy, right?
It's just, you have to go.
You got to experience it to believe it.
You have to experience, especially Glacier National Park. Put it on your list. It's
something
fabulous.
to do.
Something to do. I think we need to.
Now you also said something about citizens and democracy.
Yeah.
About being informed.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Okay. Well, remember, democracy wasn't the form of government really anywhere for any amount of time until 250 years ago. And when democracies were first created in the United States and France, you know what everybody worried about?
What?
When you shift from nobility ruling you and kings ruling you, right? So it used to be just the top families did all the ruling. And you know what that meant? That didn't just mean government, Johnny. It meant that in the army, the only people who got to be generals were people from the nobility, from these few families. The only people who got to be bishops were people from the nobility. If you were born a peasant or a serf, you couldn't be a leader, right? No matter how good you were, right? Pretty much. Now, democracy gave much more opportunity to common people, right? The big worry was, if you give common people all that power, what if they don't know nothing? That's a problem, right? So the founding fathers of the United States and founding mothers of the United States, the people we call the founders, were very worried that democracy could really destroy itself if people didn't remain or become informed. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to know a ton to be a voter, but I think you need to have a feel for lives that are not your own, right? Because when we vote, we don't just vote our self-interest. We vote, yes, partly our self-interest, exactly, but partly for our community. And remember, aristocrats, nobility were always told they needed to rule not just for themselves, but for everyone. I think in a democracy, we sometimes forget that. We're not just there to vote for ourselves. We're there to vote for our conscience. Our conscience. And I love helping students figure out what their conscience is. I don't want to tell them what their conscience is.
Exactly.
I just want to prompt them to reflect and to respect themselves and respect their own ability to learn, you know?
You're
anyway.
right. Now, being that you're a college professor at Providence College, they have a great basketball team.
They do.
Are you into sports?
I love sports.
What's your favorite sport?
My favorite sport is basketball.
So
I played basketball.
Are you proud of Providence College?
Oh, very. And I'm really excited about our new women's team coach and our new men's team coach. And I'm very proud of them. And I've taught a number of the players, and I think it's a good program. I really do.
Do you feel that it's important, besides being skilled in sports, that you be academically shaped as well?
Yeah, I do. But I also realize it's hard. In fact, remember when I told you I give students a chance to repeat 3 weeks if they're motivated but they're not quite passing? That's happened a couple of times with players. Providence College, I will say, is wonderful about keeping academics front and center for their sports, for their athletes. But I'll tell you, those athletes work really hard, Johnny. I mean, they have a heck of a schedule.
They do, huh?
Yeah. And if I were in charge, this is just my own personal feeling, okay? I think NCAA athletes who play in major sports, I think they should be given a 5-year plan for college, not a 4-year plan. I mean, that's what I would do, because I think they should take fewer courses at least during the semesters that they're competing, because it's kind of too much for some of them. But I will say Providence College is very good at supporting their academics.
So, and you're saying that, the Providence College students, you feel that they need more or less, the basketball players.
Oh yeah, not just basketball, but anybody who's playing in a sport that has, like the hockey teams, they practice enormously. But I will say, I think the school provides them with good academic support so they can catch up when they need to.
Now, besides teaching, do you have any other hobbies that you partake in?
Yeah. Let's see.
What do you like to do?
I love photography, so I put a lot of time into photography.
You like to take pictures?
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
That's why we get along.
In fact, when I was walking around San Francisco for 8 days, I was taking lots of photos of people, of buildings. I love hiking, and I love riding a bicycle. I try to ride a bike many miles a week, and I love travel. dreaming of
Yes,
travel. And I love nieces and nephews. I have 11 nieces and nephews. I'm addicted to kids, always have been.
Nice. Now, I'm sure you travel a lot, doing that, being that you are like practically a historian. Where have you traveled to, and where do you like to travel the most?
Well, the first place I ever went outside the U.S., I was 25, and I went to live in some villages in India. And I'd never been to Europe. I'd never been to the Caribbean. So India still is one of my favorite places, maybe because it was the first place I went. The other cities I've been to that I really enjoyed were Dublin, Ireland.
Ireland, of course, yeah.
Loved it. Budapest, Hungary is
Nice.
a great city. Prague in the Czech Republic is magnificent. Prague wasn't bombed during World War II in any major ways, so it's still intact, and it's so beautiful and so just fascinating. I've been to Beijing, China.
Speaking of Beijing, China, we're going to get into Movie of the Week. Movie of the Week on the Jmack Experience Podcast. Movie of the Week is The Flash. Make sure you check that out. Movie of the Week is The Flash. Make sure you check that out. All right, so what do you I already asked you most of the questions. Now, where can they follow you at social media wise?
I need to get better at social media. I'm so busy just at classroom teaching. So I'm on Instagram, just Dara Mulderry. I'm going to make that much better. I just joined recently, so I can follow my nieces and nephews. But they told me, hey, Aunt Dara, you need to put your story on. You need to get your pictures on. Yeah.
And do you have any other goals that you feel that you haven't accomplished yet?
Oh, great question. Yes. I have some articles I'd really like to write about things I've learned. And so my big goals in the next 5 to 6 years are to start writing down some of what wisdom I've learned from experience. This is what this podcast is about. And also especially from all the other people I've met who have taught me many great things. I also would love, after I retire from Providence College, I would love to teach in other parts of the world.
And can we agree that all the experiences that you've been through have shaped you into the person that you are today?
Absolutely. I feel like life is a gift. And I am so grateful to the Creator that made us all, because even though life can be very, very hard, and I felt that too, I do think there's magic in every life.
And Dar, you're a magnificent person, let me tell you that.
Oh, well, Johnny, it's
any
mutual.
advice for those out there who may be experiencing some things that you're, something similar to you, or something that you went through? Any advice to them?
Well, I thought you were going to say people experiencing really just hopelessness, because I think about that. I always have.
Maybe hopelessness.
Yeah, I think about that a lot.
Depression is real.
It's very real. And
I go through it.
I've been through it too, very badly.
Being a musician,
Sure.
podcaster,
Yeah.
people that have great hopes and aspirations go through depression.
Absolutely. The voices in your head can become very negative, and really, when you're feeling that badly, try to remember.
You're better than that, right?
Well,
there's a special
just
purpose
know
for you.
that those negative voices just simply are not the whole truth.
Yeah.
And it's worth waiting until you hear something else. And I always think holding on is so important, because none of us knows everything. And so when we're at our lowest, we have to remind ourselves we don't know what's on the horizon. Where there's life, there's always hope. I believe that.
Any last words, or anybody that you would like to mention on our show?
No, except to say thank you to you, because this to me is one of the greatest things people can do to build community. And when I talk about citizenship and democracy, to me, what you're doing fosters bonds among citizens and makes us a better country. So I thank you.
And I thank you as well. The Jmack Experience Podcast, Episode 4, Professor Dara. We're signing off. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the Jmack Experience Podcast. Be sure to come back for another episode every single week. Until next time, peace.